The United States has set events in motion to deliver what could be the biggest strike in history against Iran. Up to now, this conflict has been fought entirely through airstrikes, but we've reached a breaking point. Operation Epic Fury began with a devastating aerial assault. Iran's defenses have been almost completely wiped out, leaving them exposed to a final blow. Here's what we know. The United States is preparing for a ground invasion of Iran, and the Iranian regime is not ready for it. A ground invasion would change everything, and what comes next could be extraordinary. The forces moving toward Iran strongly suggest that a ground invasion is imminent. According to The Telegraph, the U.S. has deployed around 2,000 elite troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Gulf. These forces are currently en route and will be ready to act if negotiations with Iran fail. They're being joined by a similar number of U.S. Marines, including Marine Expeditionary Units, or MEUs, with the first expected to arrive in the Persian Gulf region by late March. These units specialize in ground operations and are typically the first boots on the ground when the U.S. launches an invasion. They played that role in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and the fact that the U.S. is assembling a force of over 6,000 elite troops around Iran strongly suggests a similar scenario could unfold here. All signs point to boots on the ground. This would change everything for Iran, and the regime knows it. That's why we're seeing clear signs of desperation from Iran, alongside urgent preparations for the possibility of facing American troops on its own soil. Karg Island offers some of the clearest evidence of these preparations, and clues about one of 4 possible strategies the U.S. could use for a ground assault. According to the Jerusalem Post and CNN, Iran is scrambling to fortify Karg Island in case U.S. Marines and paratroopers are deployed there. Reports indicate Iran has been laying traps across the island, moving in military personnel and air defense systems to protect this small but critical outpost, which plays a key role in sustaining the country's oil economy. CNN reports that roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports pass through this single island. Without Karg, the flow of oil revenue stops, and the Strait of Hormuz becomes vulnerable. Among the defenses being deployed are anti-tank and anti-personnel mines, many of them placed along the coastline, precisely where a U.S. amphibious landing would have to occur. The problem for Iran is that much of the island's existing military infrastructure has already been destroyed by U.S. airstrikes. What we're seeing now is a rushed attempt to rebuild a force that has already been heavily damaged. According to U.S. President Donald Trump, American forces completely devastated the island's military facilities on March 13th. That included missile bunkers and naval mine storage sites, both crucial for defending against an amphibious assault. Air defense systems, a helicopter hangar, and an airport control tower were also targeted in strikes clearly intended to cripple Iran's military presence on Karg Island, possibly in preparation for a future ground deployment. But Karg Island is just one possibility. There are others, and Iran's desperation is also evident in its approach to negotiations with the United States. While the U.S. says negotiations are underway, Iran claims the U.S. is negotiating with itself and insists it has no intention of negotiating right now. It's not even clear whether talks are actually happening. This looks like a regime trying to project strength, while clearly worried that the U.S. is about to escalate Operation Epic Fury to a new level. Trump has shown visible frustration over the situation. In a statement on March 26th, he said Iranian negotiators are acting unpredictably. He claimed they are privately asking for a deal while publicly downplaying U.S. proposals. He warned that Iran needs to get serious soon, because once a certain point is reached, there will be no turning back, and the consequences will be severe. Iran couldn't have received a clearer warning, and despite its public stance, the fortification of Karg Island is strong evidence of just how concerned the regime is about what the U.S. is preparing. More than 6,000 Marines and paratroopers are on the way, but what happens next could surprise everyone, including Iran. Karg Island may not even be the main objective. In fact, it's just one of 4 possible strategies. The first scenario bypasses Karg entirely. Instead of targeting oil facilities, the U.S. could focus on breaking Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. To do that, American forces would target coastal regions along the strait, as well as another strategically vital island, Keshem Island. Iran's blockade has effectively shut down a waterway through which about 20% of the world's oil normally flows, sending prices up to around $100 per barrel. Rather than deploying large warships, Iran is using an asymmetric strategy: drones, anti-ship missiles, and fast attack boats to make the strait extremely dangerous for commercial shipping. The reason Iran can maintain this blockade is its control of roughly 100 miles of coastline along the strait, dotted with hidden missile launch sites and makeshift ports. A U.S. ground operation could aim to seize or disable these key positions, stripping Iran of its ability to enforce the blockade. Then there's Keshem Island. Stretching about 80 miles long, it dominates the Strait of Hormuz and is the largest island in the Persian Gulf. While it's known for its natural beauty and wildlife, it also hides a secret: an underground missile complex. According to reports, Iran has built a network of tunnels, some reaching depths of up to 1,600 feet, housing anti-ship weapons used in the blockade. A coordinated assault could involve airborne troops parachuting onto the island to seize key positions and attack these underground facilities, while Marine units secure coastal targets and aircraft provide close air support over the strait. That could be one way for the U.S. to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The second scenario involves deploying special operations forces inside Iran for targeted missions, destroying military infrastructure or capturing key personnel. This idea comes from former Israeli defense official Ehud Elam, who suggests that while securing Hormuz is the logical step, the U.S. could also conduct precision raids. Small teams could strike radar installations, weapons depots, or other critical targets. Capturing high-value individuals is also a possibility, although less likely given the types of forces currently being deployed. It's also unclear how useful capturing Iranian leadership would be at this point. Much of Iran's senior leadership has already been eliminated in earlier phases of the conflict, including the former supreme leader Ali Khamenei. Targeted strikes are certainly possible. Large-scale capture operations are less likely. The third option brings us back to Karg Island. Seizing it would directly threaten Iran's economy. If the U.S. takes control of the island's oil facilities, it could cut off Iran's main source of revenue, forcing the regime into a difficult position: either lift the blockade or face economic collapse. A former CENTCOM commander has suggested that a force of roughly 800 to 1,000 troops could be enough to capture the island. But holding it is the real challenge. Karg sits just about 20 miles off Iran's coast, making it an easy target for missile and drone attacks from the mainland. The nearest Allied base is about 140 miles away, which complicates resupply and reinforcement efforts. U.S. forces could find themselves under constant attack, with supply lines exposed and difficult to maintain. Still, these challenges could be managed with strong air defenses and a naval blockade around the island. If successful, the payoff could be decisive. Cutting off Iran's oil revenue could severely weaken the regime. Finally, the fourth option: going deep into Iran to seize its enriched uranium. This would be the most complex and risky scenario. It would require sending large numbers of troops far inland to capture and hold heavily fortified nuclear sites. Facilities like Isfahan and Natanz are located hundreds of miles inside Iran, in open terrain that offers little natural protection. Securing these sites could require between 1,000 and 4,000 troops, not just to capture them, but to hold them long enough to extract the uranium while defending against counterattacks. Each of these scenarios presents its own risks and challenges, but one thing is clear: the situation is rapidly escalating, and a ground invasion could fundamentally reshape the conflict.